I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to The Conversation with Al McFarlane. I'm glad to be here and glad to have you along as well. I want to start by inviting you to support, to grow with this program. We are streaming live at Black Press USA and also at the Inside News YouTube channel. We want all of our friends and companions and readers to connect and help us grow subscriptions, membership on the Insight News channel. So, what to do? If you are listening either on Twitter or on Facebook or maybe even LinkedIn, jump over to YouTube for the Insight channel and subscribe to the channel, register, become a member, and also share and let people know that we're here. We're having what we call robust conversations, and today is no different. We want to be talking about for the next, forever, about the United Black Legislative Agenda. Minnesota has a massive opportunity to do the right thing by all of its citizens, but particularly by its Black citizens, because we're sitting on a almost $18 billion budget surplus. We'll talk about that in today's program. But before we do, I want to remind you that this is Data Privacy Week. And every day I'm trying to let people know to think about what privacy means, what our interests are in being aware of what privacy concerns are, and how you have to protect your privacy in the new digital age. We'll post a website that you can go to and learn about digital privacy. I want to begin with what I call a couple of hot topics today. The first one has to do with our esteemed legislator, Sister Ilhan Omar. And I'm looking at an article that was posted in Politico on January 24th. The headline is Dems mobilized to defend Omar in face of GOP defections. And the subhead was that McCarthy plans to hold a House vote to remove her from the Foreign Affairs panel, but it's unclear that he'll have enough votes, enough support in his conference. This article is by Nicholas Wu and Sarah Ferris. Again, it appeared in Politico on Monday, the 24th. House Republicans are already facing defections over a leadership push to oust Representative Ilhan Omar from her committees. Democrats plan to make the vote even more painful. The Minnesota Democrat and her caucus allies have begun to mount a robust defense of the progressive squad members who Speaker Kevin McCarthy and his allies have repeatedly threatened to kick off committees once the GOP took over the House. While they focused on Omar's past comments, for example, about Israel, some of which divided her own party at the time, Republicans loudly protested last Congress when Democrats booted a pair of conservatives from committees. So Democratic leaders are working to have no defections on the vote to remove Omar from the Foreign Affairs Committee when it comes up for a full House vote as soon as next week. And even Democrats who have vocally taken issue with her stance on Israel are now urging colleagues on both sides of the aisle to allow her to remain on the panel. She'll be the first to tell you that we both disagree on a lot of things. I love Israel and I will defend it wholeheartedly. She's deeply troubled by the Israeli government, but that doesn't mean that there shouldn't be a voice on the Foreign Affairs Committee, even if it's painful for me, said Minnesota representative, or fellow Minnesotan, Dean Phillips, who's a Jewish Democrat who in the past spoke out against some of her remarks, for which she later apologized. The last paragraph I'll read, the last two, asked whether his Democratic colleagues would come to the same conclusion. He said, I think some are struggling, but I ultimately believe yes. Taking Omar off panels only requires a simple majority vote, but even that could prove difficult for a House GOP with the historically slim margin and a second public defector emerging, such as Representative Victoria Sparks, Republican of Indiana, who has joined Nancy Mace Republican South Carolina, and declaring that she would not vote for yanking Omar. So that's the story on Ilhan Omar. And I think we got some video on that as well.
Representative Swalwell. Our democracy and our governing bodies rest on a healthy and vibrant debate. Our strength lies not in our perfection, but in the diversity of our voices and our openness to civil discourse. That is why, whatever our disagreements might be as members of Congress, policy differences alone have not and must not be cause for eliminating someone from serving on a committee. In modern American history, the punishment of stripping a member of Congress of their committee assignments has been reserved for only the most egregious wrongdoings. Those convicted or indicted on corruption, those who have engaged in bribery, sexual misconduct, encouraged violence, or other grave charges. I have served on the House Foreign Affairs Committee and the House Education and Labor Committee for the past 2 terms, committees that I have lived experience and expertise in. As a child who survived war, lived in a refugee camp, I would have never imagined that I would one day have the opportunity to serve on a subcommittee on Africa, global health, and global human rights. I would not have believed that I would one day not just serve as the first African-born member of Congress, but on a committee that oversees policies towards the continent. Kevin McCarthy's purely partisan move to strip us from our committee is not only a political stunt, but also a blow to the integrity of our democratic institution and threat to our national security.
Well, there you have it. Ilhan Omar, controversial in some quarters, but from my point of view and from the community's point of view, an effective, powerful, and clear voice. Obviously, we support not having her stripped of her committee memberships. I'm going to switch to local here. We've got some video of some of the major considerations, one of many, going on over at the state legislature here. Representative Ruth Richardson is advancing legislation that we'll share with you. And after that, I'm going to bring in my colleague and my friend, Bill English, to talk about both Omar and about what's happening at the legislature. That leading us into the topic for today, and that is the 2023 United Black Legislative Agenda. Of course, I would be remiss if I didn't take as much time as possible walking down memory lane about the political culture and the economic culture and the organizing culture of Minnesota's Black community, a culture that Bill English has been at the center of for over 60 years, I think, maybe 70 years. You'll tell me that in a minute. But let's check out Representative Ruth Richardson at the legislature.
What we have currently before us is an uneven safety net system. And it's not the first time in our nation's history that we've had an uneven safety net system. When I think about this personally, my grandparents were sharecroppers. My mother grew up picking cotton in the fields of Mississippi. Their labor was exploited, their land was taken, and when Social Security was enacted, it excluded farm workers. So my grandparents were excluded from Social Security. On my dad's side, my grandfather fought in World War II, and he came home and he was excluded from the GI Bill. There's a saying, when you know better, do better. And we know that every person who is working within the state and within this nation at some time or another is going to face illness. And it is important that we have access to a universal program because we value people's humanity. We shouldn't have programs that say that because of who you are, who you look like, who you love, where you live, or what your title is, that you are eligible for leave and others are not. So I recommend that a yes vote, and that we do a vote to ensure that every person who needs leave will in fact get it.
There we go, Representative Ruth Richardson on paid leave for Minnesota. It's my pleasure to bring into the studio colleague, elder, leader, and community business leader, corporate leader, retired but working harder now in retirement than ever, Bill English. Bill, good afternoon. Welcome to the conversation. Good to see you again, my friend.
Well, thank you, Al. And as usual, your conversations are spot on, and they deal with more than the shallow mainstream media, which typically deals with our issues very superficially, often falsely, and clearly biased. And that's why a program like this and your Insight newspaper are not very valuable. And I don't need to patronize Insight. You've earned the praise that this community deserves, gives you. Now, I haven't said that. Let me correct you. I'm old. As a matter of fact, I'm blessed to be 88 years old.
88.
88 years
Amazing.
old.
You look so good, man.
And I've been ill for the last 6 weeks. I'm just recovering from RSV. And it scared me for a while, Al, quite frankly. But as of yesterday, the doctor said I've improved substantially and my energy is back, and I'm ready to put on my big boy pants and go to work every day for our community. And that's what I've been doing for the last 55 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't intend to stop. You know, I owe, and I will continue to play it forward so that somebody else will one day pick up this mantle, as many others have, including you and your leadership that you've provided over the years, the many years we've known each other. Some days I reflect how we first met, some fun things we did together at national conventions with your help, General Mills things. Oh boy, we had some fun back in those days. But let's move forward to the discussion around a united.
Well, before we do that, I wanted, Bill, for you to make a comment about the two news clips I played. Give people sort of a Minnesota hometown context on Ilhan Omar and the threat that the Republican effort to remove her from committee, what that means not only for her and her effectiveness as a legislator, but what it means to our voice as a community, the voice of those who voted her to go to Washington to represent us. So talk about that first of all.
Sure.
What do you think?
Well, first, let me ask you a question. In your preliminary discussion, I heard you say something about Dean Phillips. Either he was pro or con her being on the committee. Could you tell me what you said, where he is?
Dean Phillips was saying that even though he has had words with her, it's my interpretation, disagreeing with her posture on Israel.
Yes.
They've had a chance to work it out, and where there's been an information gap or lack of clarity, he acknowledges that she has apologized, and he feels that she should remain on the committee.
I just
so
want to
Dean
be sure.
Phillips is saying that I'm in favor of keeping her on the committee, and he believes that everybody else in the caucus will have the same position.
Well, I certainly have. I just want to make sure, because Dean, I live in Dean's district. I need to make sure I knew where he stood.
Yep.
Because I don't always agree with him.
Right.
Okay. But having said that, as far as I'm concerned, I share some of your views. I never felt that Omar was and knowledgeable enough about the historical relationship between the Jews and African Americans, or ADOS people, as I choose to call them now, to make comments like she made. You know, some people did something bad on 9/11. Just doesn't cut it with me when we know. CIA know it was the Saudis. Everybody else knew it was the Saudis. I don't care what religion the Saudis have. I don't even know what they are. I don't think they know what they are sometimes, because they're mixed. One day they're strictly Islamic and women have to be veiled. The next thing, they're women are driving cars. So there are a lot, and they certainly are a dictatorship. But her right to be on that committee, as with one of the most esteemed members of Congress, one of the most brilliant legislators, Adam Schiff, is also being kicked off.
Mhm.
I resent his being kicked off. He stood like a star on that February 6th commission. And he's been an intelligence member for years, and a good one. So yes, I think Omar should be on there, and we should let them know. And I expect every member of the Democratic caucus to support her. And so I'm expecting that. I don't want to see any Minnesota defections from the Democratic Party. And I would suspect that every Republican congressman will vote against her,
Right.
because they don't know how to do but anything but follow.
Well, two have said they are not going to support that position. So it just takes a couple to defeat the speaker's intent. Let me move on to the comments of Ruth Richardson on paid leave. What are your thoughts on that?
As a progressive, I've always believed that the United States was behind Europe and other civilized countries. Paid leave is critical in today's where two-family incomes. When you make $70,000 a year and can't afford childcare, something is wrong in Babylon, Al.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Yes, so absolutely I'm in favor of it, in particular when we got a surplus. But you got people who make $75,000 a year and with 3 kids can't afford daycare. And they can't afford, so they have to quit work. And if they got college debt, it's even worse.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, paid leave. I want to applaud Representative Richardson. I definitely want to thank her, and she has my full support. And I will be testifying at the legislature on behalf of that bill as soon as I'm able to get over there.
Okay, well, great. Thank you, Bill. I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation with Al McFarlane. My guest is esteemed elder, leader, statesman, organizer, developer for our community, Bill English. Bill's been in the marketplace for as long as I have, or longer than me, and I've been here a long time. Bill just announced that he's 88 years old, and I'm telling you, Bill, you look great, you sound great, and I'm glad that you have come through the recent illness, and wishing and praying for the best, because I believe that your best days are still ahead. The knowledge you've accumulated, the experience, the lived experience, and the continued development of an attitude of fearlessness and an attitude of fierceness when it comes to representing the interest of our people. I think that's so commendable. Well, I wanted to talk about the 2023 United Black Legislative Agenda. Last week earlier this week, had two friends of ours, Reverend Clarence Hightower, former head of the Minneapolis Urban League, and Alfred Babington Johnson, who leads the Stair Step Initiative, both on talking about the launch of the 2023 United Black Legislative Agenda. And for background, Clarence Hightower called me a few days ago, maybe middle of last week, and asked could we, the newspaper, organize a way to get the word out about the legislative agenda. He sent me the document, and I looked at it, and it reminded me right away, Bill, of the fact we did a 10-point plan some 15, 20 years ago, spearheaded by then State Representative Randy Stanton. And I remember the energy around our commitment to articulating our own interest in our own voice was healing and inspiring and helped mobilize our community across many frontiers. And here we are again. And the unique difference now is that for sure, we know that the resources exist. The state is looking at a budget surplus of almost $18 billion. And so what I presented when I organized the data in the 2023 United Black Legislative Agenda into an advert or a announcement, a public service ad in Inside News, the theme that kept popping up was invest now, invest now, invest now. And the idea of investing leads to encouraging the state to invest in business, economic development, and employment, and public safety, in housing, in education, in health and wellness, and in policy issues. So I wanted to, we've done this before. This is not the first rodeo for the community. And that's why it's so important to talk to you, to put this initiative in this time in context. So what do you think?
Well, as you say, we go back. It was a 13-point agenda, Al, not 10.
Okay.
It was done in red, black, and green, if you will recall. And that was the brilliance of our dear friend, Randy Stanton, may he rest in peace, as a legislator. But let me say this. We find ourselves as we move forward with this Black agenda. I'm appreciative of the work that Clarence and Al Flowers and others, I understand the NAACP and the Urban League are all, and Stair Step are all engaged. I did put Clarence in touch with Tim Baylor, one of the major investors on Broadway. And what we found out is that 5 different groups of people have asked us, submitted proposals for $25 million for Broadway. Now that speaks to our inability to be transparent and communicate with each other. And we don't, white folks didn't cause that. Let's be clear. That's us acting on our own volition. And we run over there and say, boss, give me my $25,000. They then choose between what they consider to be the nice Negroes versus the real Black ADOS people. And they end up often giving money to sources that don't spend it very well. Al, we're in an unprecedented position. Not only do we have $18 billion in surplus.
18 billion with a B.
Billion with a B. We have 18 billion with a B in surplus. You've got a $50 million grant by the Bush Foundation that is given to Nexus to spend a year to figure out how to deploy it. So now there's 50 million right there. In addition, the George Floyd murder brought in somewhere in excess of $30 million on each side of the river, brother. $30 million. We know they spent $6 million trying to get rid of the police. Many of us thought that was foolish, including many people in our community, but they spent $6 million of that money. Some would say, and I agree, that the initiative now seems to be, we're intersecting with the LBGT community. I have nothing against the LBGT community, none at all. But their agenda is very different than ours. And I don't think they intersect very well. I think we have to speak for ourselves. George Floyd was a heterosexual Black male. And I don't think that he would appreciate resources being directed away from the large number of heterosexual Black people and organizations who live in this community and who've been under-marginalized and underinvested for years.
Mhm.
So as we move forward with this new effort, my urge to my brothers and my sisters, I praise Clarence and those who pulled it together, Steve and the NAACP president, and Insight for your ongoing commitment, as you always have, to run ads every week about this Black legislative agenda to keep the pressure on. And I hope that as part of this effort, we allow our Black nonprofits to spend money with the Black media. Okay?
Mhm.
There's no reason. But if they don't have any money to do it, they can't even commute their programs. Our people don't go to WCCO for information. Now, some of these youngers, they don't read nothing news except on Insight or Facebook. And I don't post to those new tubes. I don't post those tubes. But there's a whole lot of Black people who don't do Facebook,
Mhm.
who don't listen to WCCO unless it's a Viking football game. Okay? And they get their information from KMOJ and Insight and the Spokesman. And those are the kinds of organizations we have to uplift, make sure they're adequately supported, and quit complaining about their prices.
Mhm.
I don't care what it costs to put an ad in Insight. I'm willing to pay it. And we should be willing to pay it. Star and Tribune don't have no problem asking for what they want.
That's right. And they
Try
get
to
it.
buy an ad on WCCO.
Mhm.
Try to buy one and see what it costs you.
Yep.
So my sense to it is the effort that you're putting forth to make sure things are so different. When you do this kind of work, Al, you're bringing transparency, you're being communications, and so much of what we do, we lack transparency. You don't know what Nexus is going to do with that $50 million.
Mhm.
You don't know, I don't know, and I stay fully pretty much abreast of China, what's going on, at least up until the last 6 weeks. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what happened with the money from the Bush Foundation, or for that matter, the George Floyd Fund. That Nexus is also holding that money as a fiscal agent. So somewhere they're sitting on about $75 million. And don't nobody know when they're going to spend it, how they're going to deploy it. That's wrong. And
Well,
it's
there are other
wrong.
funds like that as well. I think Minnesota Business, I can't think of the name of it, MCBRE. I think that the McKnight Foundation put a lot of money into some development organizations. I think we have organizations like the African American Leadership Council, right? That have gotten funded. So I think your point is transparency is necessary. And what we need to move our community toward is a commitment that all of us will report to all of us all the time about everything. And that once we adopt that as a protocol that is based on ethics, the ethic is that we do things right, whether we're being examined or not. We do it right because it's the right thing to do. And so our and Insight's proposition, Bill, is that we have the unique capacity to serve as the information infrastructure for our community, a conduit for exchanging data, information, ideas, challenging and reporting out to each other. So let's go back to the Black legislative agenda. I have, these main points here, the priorities, see if you agree with them or talk about them. The priorities, I had the screen up before, if you would. Yeah, that that equity, there be equity in distribution and stewardship of resources, that we should advance innovation and collaboration in problem solving, that we should be intentional in upending traditional systems, and four, that we should bring the voices of the community front and center. And in so many words, that's what you've been talking about, I believe, Bill English. Equity, seeing ourselves at the table. Equity, from my point of view, is being in the room when the money is being divided and being ensure that we are getting our share of the money. It's our money. We're the taxpayers. And we should be part of the mechanism that decides who gets what, and that decision should reflect us having spoken for and achieved equity, our share, for the things that we have defined as priorities, advancing innovation. And so there are a lot of new ideas, and we ought to be able to fund new organizations, new agencies, but also fund the organizations and institutions that over the long haul have been standing in the breach and making a way for our community to mobilize and to identify itself and to project its interest by serving our community. The fourth one or third one, upending traditional systems. To me, that means, too often white people say that things don't happen because of things in our community that they call deficits or lack of training or whatever. My response to that is no, white people, you've been in charge all this time and look at where we are. And so I am blaming or holding you accountable for your failings. The disparities, gaps in education and wealth and home ownership and health are not a function of Black people's inability or lack of desire. They are functions of white people's structural marginalization of Black people and oppression of Black people. And they've perfected the system and process so that they can keep us at the margin without it looking like they're doing it and blaming us for our own pain. So what do you think about those, Bill English?
Well, first of all, I agree with them. I agree with the four that's there. Let me say that I'm already supported. I'd like to define it slightly. I want to expand it just a little bit.
Yeah.
Equity in distribution and stewardship of resources. What does equity mean in my mind?
Mm-hmm.
African Americans, ADOS, let me change it. ADOS people.
Break down ADOS. A lot of people are not up on that yet.
American descendants of slaves.
Okay.
And the reason we went to that terminology is because some people from the continent and others found it convenient to say I'm African American, but then when they say then we're Liberian or we are Nigerian or we're this or we're that, and they don't necessarily identify with us on many, and we've seen how they have in many instances operated against our interests. Now I'm not angry with them because I know where many of them come in with a colonialist attitude because they've been taught that. What I know is that we have to stand up for us. I'm not opposed to them doing anything. It will never fight them. But I'm going to promote ADOS people because we made a way for them to get here. And one day they will appreciate it. Because I remember when nobody was coming from Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? I remember that. I remember John Conyers and others fighting to increase the number of people from the continent and the Caribbean to the United States. People do not know the fight that went on to get that done. And so my sense to it is equity is meaning equity in the investment. $600 billion in taxes, Al. That's what ADOS people pay. 600 million in taxes and 6.5 billion to the economy. That's ADOS people. Now you tell me that we're getting our return on that money to our community. It's not happening. Mm-hmm. And so when we talk about equity, we're talking about investing. So $100 million out of an $18 million budget?
18 billion? Nope. Not
$18
enough.
million? Yeah, that says to me $100 million is not a overreach ask. Advancing innovation and collaboration in problem solving. I'm going to say it to you like this. I want to advance innovation and collaboration in creating Black technical businesses. You know, the Brown Group, I just got $10 million from the Brown Venture Group, which is local. They're an equity firm. They just got $10 million from Best Buy to invest in Black businesses around the country. So I hope they find a way of investing in some of our high-tech companies. They're going on. We got a couple going on right now. Serious, and I'll share them with you when we can do it privately and I get you under NDA. Because they're imminent. I'll give you an example. We just got through, Devin George has been a client of mine. We just got an approval to build a modular manufacturing facility, modular housing facility in North Minneapolis, an existing site. The city gave us a $2 million loan. It's been approved already. That's forgivable for over 30 years and low interest rate. In addition, they offered to write $10 million in commercial bonds, which could have been sold to U.S. Bank and any other bank. As is fortunate enough, Devin had, because of his relationships, is able to get some new market tax credit, and that saves him money on debt service so that he doesn't need the $10 million in bonding. There's another program coming on that I can't discuss right now because it's very secret. It's nanotechnology, and it's a game changer. And we're advancing that very quietly through the city now to get them behind. I was with Deed, and thanks to Senator Champion, last week on the modular housing, and they're all behind it, and they're figuring out how to match what the city does. And so that would be a $4 million plus Devin's own $3 million investment in it. That's $7 million. And then with the market credit and other investors, we can get to a $20 million project. But that isn't the game changer. Game changer is by the end of 24, it will employ 330 people at jobs starting at $30 an hour.
Yep.
That's the game changer. 70 before the end of this year. Now that's a local boy, Devin George, who's doing the right thing. He came here. His father told him, the people who grew you and supported you when you weren't nothing, now you need to reach back to them and bring them along. So when Devin came to me and said, Mr. English, I need your help because I know who you are. My mother would not have been able to send me to Vanille St. Margaret if she don't get a chance to work at that control data plant, as did Bobby Champion's mother. You know, my first job at control data. So my point is that equity is important, advancing innovation. The more artificial intelligence, nanotechnology is brought in. We actually put into the mayor's plan, and it wasn't just me, but I led it, who supported me. Interested was Louis King and Kenya McKnight and Tanya from McKnight Foundation. We got into the mayor's plan, advanced manufacturing and modular housing. That will allow us to have living wage job that's sustainable for the next 25 years. This is what we're working on right now. That's why they call me, Clarence, and so you got some stuff going on in economic development. No, I've been about job creation, as you know. So that's what I've been doing. But I work with these people because they're creating jobs. And so we're moving them forward. So I'm going to work with them and do everything I can to help them. But I'm going to insist on collaboration and transparency. If they don't do that, I'm walking, and I'm going to talk about them publicly.
The next point that I mentioned was upending traditional systems. And I wonder how you look at that, because to me, a shallow read of that means, and too often we've heard people criticizing legacy institutions, saying, oh, they're just taking care of their 30 or 40 employees or their little circle of influence. I don't, and I don't think it's worth getting caught up in minutia like that, because the big picture, when it comes to traditional systems, is the power relationship, the relationship that again confines our efforts, our interests, and sometimes our even ideas to small arenas at times when a big arena is what's required, a bigger vision and a bigger opportunity that nobody can give us, that we ultimately must organize and take. What do you think, Bill English?
I'd say this, first of all, white folks has not solved our problems. And you may not even remember telling me this, but years ago, you said something to me that stuck with me all these years. It said, our problems will never be solved by white people. It will only be solved when we are an integral part of prescribing the solution and executing the solutions. And if we don't do that, they will do what they are inclined to do. The beast will eat its young. They eat each other up, man. So you know what they'll do to us. And I see what's going on here in terms of the resistance we get. So I'm proud to say, yes, you're spot on with that analogy. And I told white people some time ago, I'm not teaching you about your racism. Don't ask me. You solve your racist problem. That ain't mine to solve. I'm focusing on advancing Black people and African American, ADOS people in particular, and African descent in general. So I'm promoting those causes, and that's what I will work for, and that's what I will support. And I think I'm old enough with enough integrity and enough lived experience to say, Al, you know how many times we've been through this stuff and how many times we messed it up. You know that. Now is the time to get it right. We got some bright young people. We need. I told them all, I'm not leading the damn thing from now on. I'll support you. I'll counsel you. I'll walk with you. I'm never going to walk behind you. I'll walk beside you, but I'm not going to walk behind you. But I will walk with you, and I'm ready to turn the mantle over to you. You lead. I'll whisper in your ear if you're wrong. That's what we need to be doing. And we've got a cadre of young people. But Al, sometimes they just don't know what the hell they're doing. Just telling you. And they need to ask someone. And we need to make sure we're educating them and training them and making sure they are absolutely on par. Let me give you one quick example. You know the old Broadway pizza site that's being torn down now and building. Al, they put in 160 some odd units, all affordable units, not mixed use. Right on the edge of the
River Road and Plymouth Avenue. Right?
Yes, exactly. And what do they expect is going to happen? When you got, and then if they don't have some living wage jobs, my bro, they ain't going to be afforded. This will all be subsidized. And that is going to create a concentration of poverty. It didn't have to be done that way. It could have been the mixed use housing. There's going to be, on the Upper Harbor Terminal site, 700 units of mixed use housing, third affordable, affordable, and what I call attainable, which is workforce housing for people who got a job, and then 30% market rate. Now you're creating a community, and that's going to be a destination point. 18,000 square foot facility, amphitheater. I said 8,000 seat amphitheater for programming, which Black people will be in the programming circle. They have to be according to the agreement with the city. In addition to that, we insisted that Devin George be a partner in the development at all levels. So we got a Black partner there after Thor went away. So they brought in Devin, and Devin is going to be a major partner there. So he's going to be building some of those 700 units of housing, and we're going to be using modular housing to do that. So people are building the houses that they can then afford to buy or to live in. And that's the beauty of this ecosystem that we're creating. And we expect to move into reconfiguring the facility on June the 1st. We start that, and we hope to be ready to go sometime in the early fall and start hiring the first 70 people. And there will be a career path. Now, you may start off assembling, but you can grow to inspector, to then installing and maintaining equipment all around the country. And he's got enough interest from all over the country in this game and internationally for this product. It's going to blow you away when you see it out.
Okay. I'm excited. Let me do this. I'm so glad to have this conversation with you, Bill. We talk all the time in meetings and things like that, but I think it's important that I wear my hat as the reporter, questioner, and invite you to reflect on the history of our community and the history of your personal path to engagement, both the challenges, the successes, the things you may not have considered successful. And also, it's always, in my view, appropriate to talk about the lineage. What line do you come out of? Whose shoulders are you standing on as you make your way through life? And so I want to take a minute to reflect, and have you talk about the Bill English story, if I put it that way. If I said, Bill, let's do the Bill English story short version of it, what would you tell me first?
Well, it's interesting if you say that. I'm working with two writers now that are writing my memoirs, thanks to my old boss at Control Data, who commissioned them to write a book about me. And it all came through with the modular housing thing. That the guy who owned the building found I worked at Control Data, asked me if I knew Norbert Berg, said he hired me, he promoted me, he protected me for 32 years. He hooked us back together. And Norb said to me, Bill, you've never got the true recognition you did for all you did for Control Data. You helped make Control Data one of the best companies to work for in America. And you put plants in areas where Black people had a chance to go, to grow and to thrive. And he said, and so I'm going to pay two writers, commission them to write your story.
Yeah.
I said, not an autobiography, because there's some stuff I ain't telling nobody. But I will write my memoirs and the highlights, both the good, the bad. I want to be authentic. And I've always been a flawed man. All of us are. But I intend to be authentic and tell the truth. So, let me just quickly give you an overview. Grew up in an all-Black town called Brooklyn, Illinois, right outside of East St. Louis. Matter of fact, you couldn't tell when you was in one town or the other. Founded by slaves who escaped across the Mississippi River into Illinois, founded a town, named it after Elijah P. Lovejoy, an abolitionist who had a paper in Alton, Clarence Hightower's hometown. And he was an abolitionist, and they burned his paper down and killed him. But he had armed the slaves in Brooklyn, got them to arms So they weren't slaves. They couldn't come across the river and take them back because they weren't having it. They fought back. They formed the church, Quinn Chapel, AME. And when I grew up, I went to all black high school. All my teachers had advanced degrees because they couldn't work nowhere else. Schools were segregated. And we had grocery stores and pharmacies, and everything was black. And the biggest nightclub on the either side of the river, because St. Louis closed at 12 down. East St. Louis, Illinois stayed open till all night. And so we got all the parties. I used to see B.B. King come to the Harlem Club where I worked on the parking lot for 75 cents. Ike and Tina Turner. So I grew up in that era, but with people who inspired and motivated me. My mother was the strongest force in my life. She told me that I was good looking. I was smart. She put me in school early, which I did not know. She put my age up. So all of a sudden, I realized I'm in school with big guys bigger than me. Yet I could handle my own academically with them. And so it worked out. And so obviously I was the first in my family to go to college. It wasn't the last one, though. That's good. She told all of her 12 children, you'll either go into college and you'll go to the service, or you'll get you a job and make a living and get up out of my house.
Or do all three.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And she did that. And she was the mother of 13 children, actually. She raised a granddaughter. So we all grew up that way. And so I stand on the shoulders. I remember a man that I worked early on in my high school career. He spent 15 years for a murder he didn't commit in Illinois. And they finally found out he didn't commit it. And he called me Billy Boy. And he said, Billy Boy, you're smart. You're going to go somewhere. But don't ever forget that the only way you can get where you need to go is because somebody else paved the way. Mm-hmm. And he reminded me of all of the old timers, Dawson, who was the first black congressman, Adam Clayton Powell, who reviewed it as a hero, the people at Niagara. Paul knew all about those people, and he taught me. And so I came to appreciate the shoulders I stand on locally. Josie Johnson, Frank Alsep, Nellie Stone Johnson, Leon Rankin, Ron Edwards, though we didn't always agree in the later years.
Yeah. Mahmoud.
Ron Edwards.
Yeah.
Did a lot of good work in this town. And many others. Gleason Glover, mm-hmm. Larry Borum mm-hmm. in St. Paul, Katie McWatt, and Lord knows Josie and Chuck Johnson. These are all people who helped form Curtis Shrivers and Mr. Newman. These were all people who helped inform and shape me. They was calling me a new in town. I've been there 10 years. They was calling me a newcomer. But they finally accepted me on the basis of my work.
Yep. Because
I got involved. We created something called the North Central Negro Voters League. We registered people to vote. We created the CVTAR with Mahmoud and Larry and some others, which is Latin for citizens. And we got involved politically and otherwise. And that was the start of my getting involved. And I got to meet Josie and Chuck and Katie McWatt in St. Paul and Bobby Hickman and others. And we all worked together. The river didn't seem to mean as much to us then as it does now, because we all work together. But we're still seeing better cooperation on both sides of the river. So I'm encouraged about the path forward. But I know it will only happen if we continue to be vigilant, we continue to be engaged, we intentionally speak truth to power, and we insist that we are never at a table that we are not considered a total equal. Never. I don't sit at a table unless they recognize I'm as equal as you. I may not be a CEO, but I'm a CEO in my block,
That's
in
right.
my hood.
That's
And
right.
so I come in
And I
with
think the lesson here is that we have to make sure that we are at every table. Bill, we're out of time. Thank you so much, man. It's always good to talk to you. Good to see you. And tell your friends to come back to the YouTube channel. They can catch this interview with you and share it with their neighbors. We want to build community. We invite people to go to Insight YouTube, share, subscribe, like, help us grow this conversation. We'll see you next time. I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation with Al McFarlane. Take care.
I'm on.